Now you see it?
Well, we like to say good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you've joined us. This is KMTV. We're here at the headquarters of the All Liberian Party, where the Council of Patriots will be having a major press conference. This comes 2 days after the holding of a major protest against what they call corruption, bad governance, a breach against the Constitution of Liberia, and several other factors protested against. So we're here to
Good afternoon and welcome.
this press conference. Please join us.
Press. Inviting you here today for this all important press conference to be held by the Council of Patriots, Mr. Darius Daylon, who will be reading the press statement and statement of gratitude. Thank you very much. Welcome. Mr. Daylon, take over.
Thank you. Statement of gratitude on a successful peaceful assembly and citizens' protest of Friday, June 7, 2019. A day of reaffirmation of our democratic rights. The Liberian people have indeed spoken. They spoke truth to power. We are proud to be Liberians today because we have demonstrated to all at home and abroad that we reject bad governance, poor leadership, and the reckless plundering of our country. The Council of Patriots extends its prayerful gratitude to Almighty God for a peaceful assembly and continues to pray for God's wisdom as we all collectively seek to save the state from failure. We are eternally grateful to all Liberians, including our folks in the diaspora, and friends of Liberia for their support. Liberian patriots trooped from all walks of life, and despite their political, religious, ethnic, social, professional, and other backgrounds, to demonstrate that our diversity will not prevent us from uniting around what is good for our country. They protested in silence, in their homes, and on the streets. They said, enough is enough. We extend appreciation to the international community, ECOWAS, UN, AU, and all of our development partners for helping to ensure that this historic and monumental feat by the people took a peaceful path, despite plans by detractors in the government to cause chaos. We thank our security forces, though wrecked by a spoiled system, to turn out to join us on this journey. We had one of the largest turnouts in recent history and incessantly knocked on the doors of the halls of power. Those with the heart of Pharaoh will certainly live in denial and refuse to listen. Those with a passionate and humble spirit will understand that leadership requires more than just being elected. It is a call to serve. On Friday, June 7, 2019, Liberia made history against all of the suspicion, threats, intimidation, and arrest. The unprovoked actions of government to undermine our peaceful assembly by even stooping as low as preventing and denying Liberians, business people, international organizations, and even their own partisans of using the internet and social media representative of actions of repressive regimes in Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Sudan, and many other countries with autocrats at the helm of power. Despite humiliation through all kinds of security checks and patrol, Liberians were determined to make a statement to the world. We Liberians made that statement together. All Liberians are patriots and love our dear country, and we will not rest until we offer our best. Whilst we commend our international partners, we expected the ECOWAS release who have taken into consideration the following issues and concerns. One, that the Council of Patriots religiously followed all the protocols agreed with the government, including, but not limited to, the following: non-use of drones, use of specific routes, use of agreed protest sites, and the need for citizens to remain peaceful throughout the protest. Two, that government failed to honor its own obligation that it would send the Vice President to receive the petition on behalf of the President, a failure that angered the protesters. Three, the censorship of social media on the day of the protest, which undermined additional mobilization efforts. Four, non-mention of the fact that ahead of the protest, there were deliberate attempts by government to send waves of panic through the public. Armed security men were seen in communities and parading in the streets, instilling fear. And five, that armed security officers were prohibiting free movement of citizens by making the presentation of ID cards a precondition for participation in the protest. Let it be made clear that the current administration has chosen to perpetuate the bad governance culture of holding political prisoners, a practice in which previous governments indulged. Currently, about 20 peaceful and law-abiding youth and students are being held at the Morel Central Prison in detention. We call on the government of Liberia to release those peaceful citizens that have been abducted by the state. We also noticed the use of foreign security forces on the day of the protest wearing state security uniforms. We insist that the petition was not presented on June 7, the day of the protest, because the president, as our leader, chose to deal with us not as his fellow citizens, but as his subjects, not as his people, but as his enemies. The government earlier announced that it had designated Vice President Joel Howard Taylor, an elected official, to receive our petition on behalf of the government, even as it was against our earlier demand that our petition was only to be delivered to the president himself. We gathered out there as early as 7 a.m. GMT to deliver our petition. We waited for over 11 hours on our government, but they failed to live up to their own decision and commitment to send the Vice President to receive the petition. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Liberians, we are pleased to announce to the Liberian people in the world and do place the government of Liberia on constructive notice that we are hereby releasing a list of demands to the Liberian people, to the government of Liberia through the media as contained in the people's petition. We expect the government to respond to these demands within the period of 1 month, after which we will determine the new course of action. Thank you, and may God bless you.
You remain here as we now call Henry to read out the petition.
Petition is to consider we have the General Secretary of VP Winake, Honorable Magwaka, we have Mr. Panenwa Iyure. The scope of the journal is here. And then the petition is going to be read by Mr.
Is here as the person. Now we go to the petition.
Petition to save the state, Monrovia, Liberia. Whereas the 1986 Constitution guarantees the citizens of the Republic of Liberia the right to freely, peacefully, and lawfully assemble, to petition the government and elected representatives to take action or avert any negative action as pertain to the welfare of the Liberian state and people. Whereas since January 22, 2018, the government of the Republic of Liberia, acting through its three branches, the executive, legislative, and judicial, has been flagrant, defiant, and belligerent in its conduct to the total displeasure of the people of Liberia, for whose happiness and satisfaction all government is established. Whereas we, the citizens of Liberia, acting under the banner of the Council of Patriots, are convinced that the deteriorating economic conditions will continue to worsen merely because of the intransigence of President George Weah and senior officials of his administration. Grateful to the international community and donor partners, Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, United Nations, and European Union for their continual support to Liberia's peace and development. Aware also that since the inception of the CDC-led administration, the leaderships of the three branches of government have ignored calls, cries, and concerns from citizens on all matters of state, and have instead chosen to prioritize the individual and personal interests and all aspirations above the national interest, as evidenced by, but not limited to, the following. 1. Continuous flagrant violation of the Liberian Constitution and laws, including the recent unconstitutional removal of Associate Justice Kabina Jane in spite of public outcries and disapproval. 2. Suppression of press freedom and rights, freedom of speech through threats against the BBC's Jonathan Pelili, continual molestation and harassment of Roots FM, denial of basic rights to Isaac W. Jackson, Liberia's permanent representative to the IMO, denial of operational license to Punch FM, and the conversion of the Liberia Broadcasting System, owned and operated EOBC, into a partisan propaganda organ. Construction and acquisition of schools of luxury private buildings by the president in the wake of his refusal to publicly declare and publish his assets. 4. Failure to comprehensively address the issue of Liberia's missing 16 billion Liberian dollars to date, and the $25 million yet unaccounted for, and lack of effective action taken against individuals responsible, and the betrayal of the public trust. 5. According presidential protection and privilege by announcing a retirement plan for Governor Nathaniel Patriots in ignoring any responsibility of the TEMT headed by the Minister of Finance, Samuel Twe, the unlawful injection of billions of overprinted Liberian banknotes without removing legacy banknotes, and also for the unlawful act carried out in the use of some $25 million withdrawn from Liberia's foreign reserve for a dubious mop-up exercise. 6, failure and lack of capacity to address the rising inflation and exchange rate, thus imposing unbearable hardship on the Liberian people. 7, flagrant disregard for international law and national reconciliation and disinterest in addressing war and economic crimes as documented in the TRC report, and general disregard for the rule of law and good governance. Now therefore, we, the citizens of the Republic of Liberia, acting in one accord, honor the banner of the Council of Patriots, comprising patriotic citizens, civil society groupings, pressure and interest groups, youth and student organizations, marketers, transport operators, including motorcyclists, taxi drivers, teachers and education workers, health workers, farmers, and political parties, do hereby demand from our national leaders serving through the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of our government as follows. 1, honor governance, human rights, and rule of law. Electoral reforms. Urgently proceed with efforts to amend and or repeal the current electoral laws. Immediately commission an independent investigation into the hasty impeachment of Associate Justice Kabina Jane, which has undermined the integrity and independence of the judiciary at a time when Liberians are craving for justice, and commence immediately, in collaboration with the Liberian National Bar Association, an overhaul of the judiciary, including the reconstitution of the Supreme Court bench. Launch an immediate independent investigation into the mysterious death of Central Bank of Liberia Assistant Director Matthew J. Innes, which occurred at the same time reports from 2 forensic audits into the missing billions of newly printed Liberian banknotes were released and extend same to other questionable deaths. Establish a court to address claims, corruption, and strengthen Criminal Code E, which is responsible to try rape cases. Demonstrate respect for human rights, human dignity, and press freedom through the comprehensive review of our laws that should restrain the exercise of basic freedoms, especially the media freedoms. The immediate disbanding of the Technical Economic Management Team and the criminal prosecution of its members for complicity and involvement in the illegal conduct of the $25 million infusion and mop-up exercise. In this regard, special reference is made to Finance Minister Samuel Twe and CBL Governor Nathaniel Patriots, for which they must be dismissed and prosecuted for criminal culpability under their direct charge. The bogus mop-up exercise was conducted and missing billions mismanaged. Immediately demobilize all former fighters redeployed into various entities, security agencies, thus reigniting fear, creating a threat to peace, and undercutting the restructuring of our national security sector, and investigate how such a violation of the peace agreement of 2003 have been allowed to occur. National peace and reconciliation. Immediately establish a task force with clear mandate to implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, particularly the recommendation for establishment of a war and an economic crimes court in Liberia without delay. The government of Liberia should make a request to the United Nations for such a court before July 26, 2019. Immediately ensure direct budget allocation for the implementation of TRC related recommendations. Immediately take steps to curb through public denunciation, reprimand, and or condemnation all anti-peace, fanatical, sectionalistic, tribalistic, and divisive utterances by officials, friends, associates, political actors, whether of the CDC or otherwise, which seek to promote division and disunity in violation of the Liberian Constitution. Immediately address the return and redeployment of ex-fighters and generals into our security apparatus in complete violation of the Accra Peace Agreement, efforts to implement security sector reforms, and address the question of impunity. Integrity and accountability. Immediately implement a comprehensive audit of all government ministries, agencies, and parastatals of the period of this administration and legally address past audits. Immediately conduct a comprehensive audit of all expenditures on Liberia's foreign reserve account and the national budget. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all and any of the dozens of personal infrastructure and all building projects undertaken by President Weah at several locations in Montserrat County since he assumed office, including the purchase of a private jet and a yacht. This is a constitutional requirement. Immediately gave account of how more than $3 million of the Ebola Emergency Fund contributed by donors and placed in government's consolidated accounts was withdrawn and expended, for which reason many of Liberia's major international partners have protested and demanded restitution. Immediately suspend all negotiations for loans and any new concessions with unrecognized lending organizations until at such time when integrity institutions and systems are restored to operate without interference and within the limits of the law. Immediately launch an audit of all infrastructure and ongoing road projects. Immediately gave account of all social development funds paid by various concessionaires for the benefit of the counties in which they operate. Immediately ratify both Eton and Iboma financing agreements. Immediately halt the unlawful awarding of contracts to businesses with close ties to the president and senior members of his administration. Reconstitute through independent vetting all integrity institutions to ensure independence. Corruption. For the purpose of transparency, President George Weah and his officials should immediately make publish assets they are reported to have declared to the General Auditing Commission, GAC, and Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, LACC, and ensure that they are verified. Immediately establish a special court to try all corruption cases in Liberia so that indictments cannot linger indefinitely and so that justice can truly be served to those accused. Beginning effective fiscal year 2019-2020, reallocate to health institutions all appropriations for medical checkups and benefits for public officials serving in the three branches to improving the country's healthcare system. Less attention is paid to Liberia's health sector because most officials can travel abroad, not for cases referred to hospitals, but also for as simple a process as seeking a medical checkup, which is why priority consideration is not given to the country's health sector. Legally expel all individuals previously convicted for crimes in their countries who are now operating in Liberia. Immediately provide explanation as to which individuals within the Central Bank of Liberia or the government of Liberia received or approved the injection of the new Liberian banknotes into the economy without effectively removing from circulation the equivalent quantity and or value of legacy banknotes. This is a recommendation and or request from Crow's Associates. And address the role of the TEMT chaired by the Minister of Finance, Samuel Twe, as well as its culpability. Immediately stop funding activities of the First Lady. There is no such office legally created under our Constitution. Immediately halt a comprehensive audit of the National Legislature. Economy. Develop, design, and implement an economic reform plan to revive our declining economy and address financial and fiscal reforms, comply fully with the budget and public financial management laws by stopping the habit of budget spending. Restore integrity to our forestry sector by taking urgent steps to maintain the current monetary system as the contract with SGS will soon end. Immediately desist from withdrawing funds from Liberia's foreign reserve. Immediately cease any and all actions, intentions, desire, and attempts to reduce civil servants' salaries at any time in the short, medium, and long terms. Immediately give a full status report of Liberia's foreign reserve and henceforth stop its unlawful use, and statewide, the National Reserve is being depleted despite there being no national emergency on hand. Immediately place a moratorium on hiring to include state-owned enterprises until at such time when a comprehensive report on the status of the SOEs has been prepared, submitted, and considered by the legislature without prejudice to their continuous viability. Immediately remove all additional procedures and cost-adding steps and simplify all import and export procedures. Immediately remove the precondition of obtaining container tracking numbers, CTNs, before loading any containers destined for Liberia, and immediately address the runaway exchange rate and high prices of goods and services. Health, education, and agriculture. Develop and implement a comprehensive program to properly fund the education, health, agriculture sectors as a matter of priority. Immediately remove duties on all agricultural imports and implements in order to support local food and cash crop production. Immediately review the continual selective appropriations to privately owned and operated educational and health institutions without regard for long-standing institutions that have been rendering invaluable services in these sectors for decades. Immediately implement the free tuition policy for public universities and communities as announced by the President. Basic rights. Halt or refuse to sign into law the new rape law that makes rape offenses billable. Unconditionally pass the domestic violence bill and increase funding, beginning with the current budget, for Criminal Code E for cases relating to women and other rights issues. Review and provide adequate budget support to gender equality in necessary areas of integrated law enforcement, funding systemic programs such as creation of safe homes for victims, provision of counseling programs, and the development of specific policies ensuring universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. Unconditionally release the report on more than mean rape and sexual violent case and prosecute those deemed culpable for the offenses. Immediately remove the suspension on Punch FM license and stop the jamming of Roots FM as a means of enhancing access to public information. Petition made on this 9th day of June AD 2019 in the city of Monrovia, Republic of Liberia, by the Council of Patriots, a conglomeration of patriotic citizens, civil society groupings, pressure and interest groups, youth, workers, and student organizations, and major political parties. The people have spoken. I thank you.
So there you have it. Patriots are reading the petition that was supposed to be delivered on Friday. And then you can see members of the soup. You have Martin Foley,
President,
and then
almost Vice President of the Republic of Liberia.
you have Penina Mure, Honorable Walker, and Raymond
They're
Page.
not there for the Liberian Party. They're not
Chairman, we won't be able to get everybody. Chairman,
You don't know anything. You're going to get a speech. Keep watching KMTV because we are bringing you live events. We just listened to the speech read about Henry Foster, the petition that was supposed to be made on Friday by the Council of Patriots. So we are here waiting to see if the air for this gentleman sitting right in Rock Shores. And we're very angry, and we're doing our work hard. It's a rim of big.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we're not taking any questions. I think you have more than enough, to report on. We want to thank you for coming to the All Liberian Party headquarters for this press conference, and we look forward to reading, your publication or seeing it by the internet or wherever the case may be. We thank you, and let's all remain patriotic and love our country even more than we love ourselves. So God bless you, and thank you.
So this is how we come to the end of the press conference from the Council of Patriots.
Please go and give your email address to more
So we'd like to say thanks for joining us. We did not have the time to ask questions, but we listened to the recommendations coming. I think they are all mandatory recommendations calling on President Mia to act in certain things in his government in a period of 1 month. We don't know what kind of action they will be coming up with if the president feels to listen to them as they just ended their press conference. So KMTV would like to say many thanks for joining us. You see former Vice President Joseph Boaka, you see chairperson of a former ruling United Party, Wemon P, and of course Benona Yiri and the rest of the guys who came to grace this occasion here at the All Liberian Party. Do have a great day. Godfrey Badu was behind the camera. We wish you a very great Sunday from all of us here in Montreal County in Louisville, Liberia.